All right, we're going to give everyone just a minute for the people to get in and get settled. We're excited that you're joining our event today. We'll get started in just a moment, but welcome, welcome. We're so excited you're here today. Seeing the people flying in, that's so much fun. Welcome to our We Run on EOS event for today. We're going to give us just about 30 more seconds and then I'll get us started. We're so glad you're here. We are going to be working today on one of those foundational tools. Oh, good. I'm glad to see people are putting in where they are from. That's fun to see. So everybody, I hope you'll participate. And it is 10 o'clock on the button for me. So welcome, welcome, welcome. We are so excited for everyone to be here for our EOS webinar focused on sharpening the saw with the meeting pulse. That's our tool for today. Lots of people joining us. We're excited to see you. We have some stellar programming and we're excited to bring it to you. Again, we're happy that you've decided to spend an hour with us. So let's dig in. Like everything else here at EOS, we are going to start on time and end on time. I am Lisa Skipper, and we're spending time focusing on the meeting pulse. For those of you who are new to EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, welcome. We're glad you're here. For those experienced with EOS, we're also happy that you've decided to join us today, and I know you'll get a lot out of it. As I said, my name is Lisa Skipper. I am a certified EOS implementer in Houston, Texas. Hi, y'all, for anybody joining us from my native home state of Texas. I have been helping entrepreneurial leadership teams implement EOS for a little more than 5 years. And I have more than 40 years of experience in leadership and growth. And I'm excited to be your MC today. We do have a few housekeeping items, so let's dive in and then we'll kick it over to today's facilitator, Matt Beecher. Today's session is being recorded. The recording will be shared today following the event. Today is a webinar format, so while we won't have you on camera, we'd love to hear from you in the chat. Excuse me. If you have any questions that you would like our facilitator to answer today, when we get to the Q&A section of our time together, we ask that you put that in the Q&A feature. That's in the bottom. It says Q&A, it's got a question mark. You can add items to the Q&A at any time throughout the hour. So if you have a burning question that you really want answered, go ahead, start adding them. We'll be monitoring those questions. And when it comes time for Q&A, we'll work our way through what we have had submitted. We do encourage you to take all you can from today's event. One excellent way to do that is to take great notes. Here's a great quote for you. It's from Brené Brown, one of my favorites. Here's what she said: "The path from your head to your heart is through your hand." Very often, typing notes aren't enough for me. I actually need to write them down. Okay, so one final note, then I'm going to pass it over to Matt so he can teach us the meeting pulse. We would love to know when something resonates with you. So please, if you feel passionate about something, use those reactions. Smiley faces, hearts, thumbs up. We love to see them all. With that said, I'd like to welcome your facilitator, Matt Beecher. We're so glad you're here with us today. Take it away, Matt.
Hey, thank you so much, Lisa. Hey, everybody. I'm glad to be in this chair today and talk about some of the foundational tools, power of the meeting pulse. Thank you. I'm so grateful Lisa's here as a sidekick and supporter. She really is a leader and swap chairs with me because she's got such great insight and expertise in some of these areas. So glad to be in partnership there. And yes, please throw us questions. We would love you to get something valuable out of the material that's shared, but we don't want it to feel like it's just a shrink-wrapped presentation. If there's things that you particularly know or don't know that you'd like to get commentary on, let's have it be as much of an open conversation as we can. As we do so, we're going to follow an agenda, and it's not a tight agenda, but it's going to be something that keeps us honest and moving forward. So you can see here on the slide that we have currently, we've got an agenda that starts out with just some Meeting Pulse 101 material. And I'll just pause and say it's called 101 because it is a little bit basic and really good for people who are new to EOS or new to the concept of what a Meeting Pulse is. But it lays the foundation for some of the other questions that we can answer and for Meeting Pulse 201. So we'll start there. We'll end with a section dedicated to Q&A where you can put things in the Q&A box, as Lisa indicated. Or we've also got questions that have come in advance of the webinar that we'll ask and answer from. And then we'll finish up, as Lisa said, right on time. So my name is Matt Beecher. I live at the opposite latitude of the country from Lisa. I'm north in Minnesota from her south in Houston. And this is the time of year where I'm counting the number of days I can still wear short sleeves. So I've got about 35 days left, I think, that I can do it. My wife's already wearing long sleeves. So it's a beautiful day in Minnesota. If you're nearby, I hope you're soaking it in because the days are numbered. I live here in Minneapolis. I've been an EOS implementer for 5 years and ran EOS in a handful of businesses where I was owner and integrator and visionary for 5 years before that, a couple of different experiences. So I've had a decade with EOS marinating in my world, and it is something I love and something that I have a lot of passion in. And I'm just delighted to be an implementer where I get to teach and facilitate and coach those practices, behaviors, principles, frameworks, tools in the businesses of others and in the lives of others. We just love the idea that it helps you run a better business and live a better life. So to that point, I'm going to jump right in and say the Meeting Pulse. You can see it's got an R with a circle around it, meaning it's words we use and that we have interest in knowing what they mean and conveying what they mean with some precision. We call it a Meeting Pulse because it's like a heartbeat. It's a routine. We want to actually eliminate spikes in effort and focus by making a cadence of a Meeting Pulse that we believe should be held at the same day, same time, same agenda, starting on time, ending on time. I'll describe a little bit more about that as we talk about a couple of the specific meetings that are part of that Meeting Pulse. But it achieves this third bullet of what we believe is keeping the circles connected. And if you've read Traction or heard Gino Wickman speak or others, you know this analogy of there are circles, which is our sphere of responsibility, work, and life, that we need to keep connected in an organization. And the Meeting Pulse keeps those connected in the right degree of overlap, with just enough that we keep independent action moving forward, but also rely on collaboration where appropriate. You'll remember, if you've seen it, the EOS model is at the highest level. I just have to pause and say that I love this. I believe that the magic and power and silver bullet parts of EOS is not necessarily in what we teach in every single slice of this pie, but it's in the way that it's reinforcing and synergizing behavior, interdependent with each other, reinforcing each other together to be the operating system of growing entrepreneurial businesses. So I love this model. We particularly, when we talk about Meeting Pulse, aim at the lower pie slice here, which we call the traction component. And it's this idea that you can have all the vision that you want, great data, wonderful people, but if you're not getting things done and achieving things and executing, then you can't achieve what all the other pieces might mean and hope for. So we have this traction component, 2 bullets we put on this component. One is the use of rocks, which is those 90-day priorities that help us stay focused for 90 days on moving things forward throughout the year, connected, of course, to our 1-year plan and our longer-term vision. And then the Meeting Pulse. So it's placed in the model in the right place, where traction is kind of 30,000 feet. And I'm sorry, vision is 30,000 feet. Traction is 300 feet or 30 feet. It brings our vision down to the ground, which is so needful to execute on what we believe is possible. This wonderful quote by Gino Wickman that vision without traction is nothing more than hallucination. So we care so much about having vision at the top, but then the ability to get it done. The Meeting Pulse aims at curing the common human disease of procrastination. It's just part of humanity. We wait until a deadline to execute, and you can see here if X is the X-axis is time, the Y-axis is our activity, which includes our thoughts, our work, our decisions, our action that we take. And you can see that often the human diseases, we rush toward the last minute. And what we want is to smooth that out. A better approach would be, let's at least, if there's going to be a spike, let's make nearer term deadlines with regular intervals and cadences, which we eventually call the weekly level 10 meeting, so that we see action happen more regularly than at the end of a quarter or at the end of a year or at the end of a cycle. The meeting pulse is set to be like this heartbeat. Utopia, over time, as you live this way, utopia would be, let's figure out a way that if time again is the x-axis and activity is the y-axis, coming out of a meeting, which might be on the left side, let's have action where we do things and act on things and investigate and solve. And then as we get ready for the next meeting, our action is ready for it. And it's not necessarily a spike at the end of the period. It's a slide from high activity down to the next period where we're ready for it. So again, the meeting pulse is aiming to build toward this utopia. All right. So when we think about meetings, we're going to talk specifically in this 101 section about the level 10 meeting. And in essence, it is a tactical meeting, which is different than a strategic meeting. One of the questions that I saw in advance of this webinar was, hey, I've read Patrick Lencioni, Death by Meetings. What's the similarity between the two? And we would say there are just completely a ton of overlap. Pat Lencioni in his book teaches that there's this idea of if you want great meetings to be great, there should be some that are strategic where you think broader and bigger, and some that are more focused on tactical where you think about execution in the weeds a little bit. And that's where we start here with this 101 section, is this tactical meeting. At tactical level 10 meeting, we believe that we accomplish a few big things. One is that every single week we review the numbers and priorities that we've set as important. We call those 90-day priorities rocks, and make sure that they are on track every single week. We consider in that weekly meeting customer and employee satisfaction, and we check in to make sure that everybody's circles are connected around those two most important constituencies. We also spend time solving the most important issues. And as I talk about the L10 meeting in a moment, we're going to talk about how that works in a unique way given the L10 structure. But in essence, what we do in this meeting is solve issues. It could be called a problem opportunity solving meeting. We call it the L10 for a variety of reasons. And then lastly, if we're going to have effective tactical meetings, we're going to, in those meetings, agree upon action. We're going to take action when we find opportunity to act. So that's a nice framework for us to think about, hey, what's the purpose of this? And then next, what we'd like to do is actually show you what does that L10 particularly look like. So here's how this works. I'm going to describe the L10 meeting, which is a weekly leadership team meeting that we believe should last 90 minutes every week for the leadership team of an organization. Start on time, end on time, same agenda, all the things that we've said. But I'm going to show you the agenda and the prescriptive approach that we have to that level 10 meeting. I'm going to describe each of those things. I would be happy then to just pause and make sure that there's no uncertainty about those individual pieces. We don't need to save questions about that for the next end of the section. So jumping into the L10 meeting. We start those 90 minutes by saying there needs to be a segue, or we might call it good news. So if you know these EOS meetings, we believe in starting our meetings with a check-in that includes everybody in the organization, everybody at the meeting, so everybody in that particular team, starting to check in with a personal best in the last week and a business best. We do this for a variety of reasons. It transitions our brain from working in the business to working on the business. It lifts us up. It also warms the team, builds health, breaks ice. And the other thing that I think is magic is it helps us say, hey, we're going to talk a lot about gaps and challenges and opportunities that can feel tough. Let's start the meeting with focusing on where we're winning so that our mindset is not negative from the beginning, it's positive. So we start that with 5 minutes of just a quick check-in. Then we move to a 5-minute look at our scorecard, and we won't look at the scorecard in this meeting. It's coming in a future webinar series in this series, but we just look for 5 minutes at the most important numbers that we've set as a leadership team, those leading indicators to determine are they on track or off track. And if they're off track, hopefully the scorecard is built such that we care enough to solve why they're off track. So if they're off track, in this 5 minutes, we simply drop them down to the issues list to be discussed and solved later. But we just do a 5-minute view of the numbers to say, let's put red or off track numbers down below. We then spend 5 minutes in the same way as with the scorecard, but instead of looking at numbers, we're looking at our most important priorities. For every quarter, an EOS company decides what the most important things are we've got to nail in that quarter. And then every week, we look at the rocks or the quarterly priorities and say, are those on track or off track? And if they're off track, we put them on the issues list for consideration later. We don't spend time talking about why they're off track or how to get them on track. We just drop them down. And then lastly is what I mentioned earlier. We just have what we call headlines, which is a check-in on customer and employee satisfaction and the state of our customer and employee pool, to see if they're all as well, to share some news, to share updates. If there's an issue or an item that needs to be discussed, it drops down to the issues list. This is an important piece that sometimes the hardest thing I see when I work with clients who do EOS and they're ready to be really good at it. Those 3 things are the hardest to get right because they're just 5 minutes each. And we're prone to dive in and solve and let's talk about why that number is red. Let's talk about why that rock is off track, or how do we get it on track? For these first 3 items here that are just 5 minutes each, it's reporting only. We're just looking across them like a dashboard to say what's going well, what's not. And if it's not going well, it then drops down to the issues list for later consideration. And the discipline to that timing is really, really important. Then we look at 5 minutes, we look at the to-do list. This to-do list, and this graphic on this slide is great because you've got some scribbles. It's a living to-do list inside the L10 meeting for this team. And this to-do list is where we break down pieces of our accountability into assigned action that people take. Normally, it's things people can do between this meeting and the next meeting. So when we're reviewing it here, we're looking back to the 7-day to-dos we said we're going to be done today. And we're saying, are they done or not done? If there's an issue with one of them, we might drop it down to the issues list to be considered. But this is where we get really kind of rubber meets the road. The rocks are broken into pebbles here, and we say, are you getting the pebbles connected and solved in the way they should? This to-do list is magic. We believe 9 out of 10 of these should fall off every week. So to that point, to-dos need to be written in a way that are clear, crystallized in people's minds. They're crisp, they're clear actions that can be done in a short amount of time. Now we're finally to that issues list that we've been dropping things down to. And now we have 60 juicy minutes to solve issues. And though we won't talk today about issues and what they mean, the brief reminder is issues is not just hard things and challenges. It is that, but it's also ideas and opportunities and things that we need the brain power of the team to dive in and solve. Really, truly, these 60 minutes is the heart of why we meet every week, is to solve issues, which means solve problems and capture ideas and take advantage of opportunities. 60 minutes every week. But we don't do it first thing, as we've already said. We preview that work by looking at all the things that should matter the most. So we're not just chasing the fires that are burning the hottest this day. We're looking at the things that we said were the most important: metrics, customers, employees, rocks. And we're dropping that down so that when we do IDS, we have now a whole list of things we could talk about. So we start by saying, what are the most important 3 things? Let's list those, solve them, and then pick 3 more and solve them before we finish the meeting. Then religiously and connected to the time, 5 minutes before the meeting ends, we stop issue solving and we do conclusion, where we recap any new to-dos, decide messages, decisions, and actions that need to be communicated out, or what we call cascading messages to the rest of those outside of the meeting, And then we rate the meeting on a scale of 1 to 10, hoping we get people to say that was a good use of my time in terms of a 10, which comes to the title, the level 10 meeting. Okay, that's a review of the level 10 meeting structure. I'm looking for any really near-term kind of questions, and I see a couple there. Lisa, are there any that we should answer right away related to these?
I don't think so, not at this moment. We have some questions, but I think it'll be better if we answer them at the end.
Okay, great. That's great. That's great. So we'll save them and we'll answer those toward the end. The next thing I'm going to show is the use of a tool, EOS 1, in running a level 10 meeting. Now, I'll just pause here and say EOS 1 is one tool. I just think figuring out the way to run these meetings effectively and track decisions made, to-dos assigned, metrics, you got to find some system in order to do that and stay connected to that system. That might be on paper, it might be in a spreadsheet, it might be on a OneDrive, or it could be on a cloud tool. EOS 1 is one way. And so I'm going to transition to a video that just describes how that tool runs you through the meeting. It's an interesting way to see how the tool can facilitate it. And so I'm going to have some conversation on the other side of that video.
Ready to hop in? Click Join. When everyone's ready, click Start Meeting. In the segue, click Auto Pick Next to randomly choose the next person to check in. Next, you'll review your scorecard. Here, you'll see on-track measurables in green and off-track ones in red. If you see an issue you want to discuss, click the IDS icon to add it to the issues list. Click the Next button to go to Rocks, where you can let your team know if you're on track or off track. Drop off-track rocks to the issues list to discuss. In Headlines, cascade messages from other meetings to your team. Share company news, and give important client updates. During the to-do list section, call out Done or Not Done and check off to-dos that were completed on time. In IDS, sort issues by title, date created, or by the person who raised the issue. Split issues into columns and click Show Numbering to make issue identification easier. Click the icon to the left of the issue to prioritize the first 3 you want to address. Identify, discuss, and solve each issue in order of priority. When your team is getting stuck, not digging deep enough, or distracted, the EOS 1 animals at the bottom of the screen are there to help you get back on track. From here, mark the issue as solved, move the issue to another meeting, or add it to the long-term issues section on your VTO. Remember to assign to-dos as you solve issues. Time to conclude. Here you'll recap to-dos assigned, create cascading messages, and rate the meeting from 1 to 10.
Okay. So great video from EOS 1. Great tool. Let me just add one comment about the tool. While I just said before we started the video, there's value in having a tool that keeps us together and a system, my only additional thought is I have seen time and time again, teams get distracted by the tool and lose the ability to really, truly dive into the meeting. And so we don't want the tool to eclipse it. I've seen people try to join the actual meeting and participate and add issues, and they get so engrossed in like taking notes and watching metrics that they don't participate in the meeting. So it's a warning sign to watch out for. And in fact, it makes me want to just answer one of the questions that I see here. It was asked by Nell, who asked, what roles do you recommend having in the L10? That's a great question. We do say it's useful for somebody to be in charge of the paperwork, which might be driving the tool or notes in the meeting, and someone else leading the discussion so that everybody else can not have to do either of those roles and be fully participating. So we really do like somebody kind of running the notes and tool versus somebody and have it be a different person than running the actual meeting discussion. And then you might assign other people as a timekeeper, etc. Some people say they want somebody to watch for tangents and to call those out. Moreover, I think there's value in everybody taking ownership for the effectiveness of the meeting. So I'll just say that I think that was a great question, and I see it being an important piece. Another one that I want to ask, just because we're really close, is a question I see from Cheryl, who asked, on the to-do list, we often mark items off prior to the L10. Should we wait and do it during the L10? I think it's up to you, but I think there's value in us seeing, oh, this was a to-do and it got marked off. I would prefer it not to go away and disappear forever, because I think there's something about in an L10 where somebody's assigned a to-do, knowing that they have an assignment and then having some accountability for a return and a report on, did that get done? And if they say it got done, but I don't think it solved the issue I thought it was going to solve, I might be, well, there's more to that. Let's add that to our issues list. So I think there's value in, at least even if you cross it off during the week, don't disappear it. Make sure that there's still an opportunity to talk about it. Okay, more questions coming in. Those great questions. We're going to try and get to all of those in time. I'm going to transition us to this section that we're going to call 201. So notice that our topic today is meeting pulse, not just level 10 meetings. The level 10 meeting is one of the meetings in the meeting pulse. So we want to just introduce you to a few other meeting types out there so you know they're available. And of course, if you want to ask more questions about those or learn more about them, that's, you choose what kinds of things you want to know about it. The meeting pulse, one of the versions of that is the overall arching yearly meeting pulse. And you can see this graphic on the slide indicates the idea in the words that I mentioned of Patrick Lencioni of you need tactical meetings and strategic meetings. These are the strategic meetings where the leadership team 1 day a quarter meets together and does what we call quarterly pulsing. And then one of those quarters, they meet for 2 days and we call it annual planning. I'll just briefly go through what happens in those meeting pulses or those meeting agendas. So in the 2-day annual planning, we spend a significant amount of time talking about the health of the leadership team, because we know as that leadership team goes, so will the rest of the organization. So we spend talking about team health and doing some activities to strengthen trust and understand some of the things that we need to do to become world-class. We run a SWOT analysis, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. It's the one time a year where we say, let's look outside enough, broadly enough, to really identify those strengths and weaknesses, opportunities and threats, and let's talk about which one of those should be issues that we put into our plan. We also do what's called an organizational checkup, and it might answer one of the questions I saw in the earlier Q&A box, where this is our opportunity to measure how well are we deploying all the operational, entrepreneurial operating system tools and frameworks in the organization. It's 20 simple questions. It's available online. You can take the org checkup anytime, but we think EOS will improve your performance on that. And we check it every year, looking for opportunities from gaps in that org checkup every year to put into our planning for the year to get strong. We then review with great care all of the questions on the VTO that pertain to company vision. And there's 8 questions on the VTO. On the vision side of the VTO, there are 5 questions. So we review in great care core values, core focus, core target, marketing strategy, and your 3-year picture. We do that. And though we do that every quarter, we spend a little bit more time really rethinking it, including pushing out the 3-year picture to the next year in the calendar. We then set a new 1-year plan, which is on the reverse side of the VTO, and we build that. And then we also build the next quarter's worth of rocks in that meeting. And that's different than the 1-day quarterly pulsing, where every quarter thereafter, we review the prior quarter, we do review the VTO, we teach EOS tools that the organization of this leadership team has decided and that they need to get better, whether it's in becoming a better boss or getting better with their scorecards or having an understanding about how they can more effectively build team health through the organization or document processes. This is where we teach all the other tools that are not in the foundation of what we execute on. We set new rocks every quarter, and then we solve the strategic issues on our long-term issues list that lives on the BTO. We solve those or discuss those and move toward solve in the one-day quarterly pulsing, which these two kinds of meetings, all these strategic meetings are critical. They're important, but we hope that the work done there is done well enough that then in our weekly L10s, we know that we can focus on the near-term tactical, practical stuff. All right, one more meeting that's in the meeting pulse that I think is worth us just knowing is out there, and many of you might be familiar with it, is the meeting that we call quarterly conversations. So quarterly conversations are simply informal quarterly meeting for bosses and direct reports. The purpose of those quarterly meetings, those quarterly conversations, I should say that term carefully, is to drive what we call all the time in EOS LMA, to drive leadership, management, and accountability. In fact, the quarterly conversation is a tactic of management that drives accountability. It provides an opportunity to informally check in with the employee, not just on their rocks and their roles and their core values. Yes, it is all of those, but also to just check in with them on their experience in the employee value proposition of the organization. So we believe that those should be scheduled in advance and not last minute. We think there's value in getting the person off site so that it feels like they can speak candidly and informally and comfortably. We believe the topics to discuss are core values, roles, and rocks of the person and the organization. And the people analyzer tool, which if you know EOS, you know that's how we evaluate the right person, right seat fit for every role, seat, and person. That can be used as a prep for this discussion, but we don't want it to feel like it's a performance review. We want it to be an informal conversation. So these are not quarterly reviews, these are quarterly conversations. And then lots of time where the leader is asking the employee what's working and what's not working. And the balance of discussion is more toward the employee speaking and talking and getting heard than it is for the manager to speak. And then, of course, you identify next steps and follow-up action from anything coming out of the quarterly conversation. So some organizations use this in different ways than others. We teach it as a standard that we know works so that you don't end up at the end of the year and say, well, I've never checked in with my employees, so I don't know how to evaluate them or think about their compensation or know if they are committed to be here for the vision and the execution that we know is possible. It's quarterly check-ins that are more regular and more powerfully impactful on the relationship, the compact, the circles connected between boss and employee. I just see a question of, does the quarterly conversation replace the quarterly performance reviews? Yeah, it would. And our approach would be, it's not a review, it's a conversation. Some people have made it a feeder into the review where they document it and they note it as quarterly check-ins that then all feed into an annual review. We let companies decide the right way to do that. All right. So we've talked about a lot. We've talked now about the 2-day annual, the 1-day quarterly conversation, or the 1-day quarterly and the quarterly conversations. I love this diagram that the visionary of EOS Worldwide showed in a meeting I was in once that's just called the EOS Company Calendar that shows how all of these meetings might work together. So you can see here the quarterlies and the annuals that are listed around the circle that we showed earlier. And then, for example, if I was in this quarterly, shortly after the quarterly, I would hold a state of the company, which we're not going to talk in great detail, but that's another meeting where we tell people where we've been, where we are, where we're going. We try to get everybody on the same page with the whole organization, looking at the BTO, making sure there's connection there. Shortly there, related to, is holding a departmental quarterly. Depending on the size and scope of your organization, your leadership team has their quarterly. It could be very valuable for a department to have their quarterly. And you can see over here a potential departmental quarterly agenda where they're setting their new rocks and IDSing, just like you would in the leadership team quarterly. And then throughout the quarter are these weekly level 10s. And then sometime in the quarter, it's not prescribed that it happened toward the end, but there's a quarterly conversation. Some companies have said they like it toward the end of the quarter because it's good information to then bring into the leadership team quarterly. So this idea of there is a cadence and a heartbeat and a pulse across all the meetings we hold is one that we believe in that will drive accountability help us achieve our vision, ensure clarity, strengthen team health. We believe the meeting pulse is just critical. And I will say, most organizations I've worked with have described that when the meeting pulse is deployed and running, and it takes, we implementers work with companies who have a desire to get this done and get it done well. It takes maybe 18, 24 months to be able to get to a place where this is working all smoothly. That was a long wind up to say, many organizations report they have fewer meetings and better meetings. That the impact of the meetings is really truly on solving issues, determining action, keeping things moving forward to achieve a clear vision of what we care about the very most. Just a question I see right in the box right there. Why are there 2 A's at the bottom? It indicates it's a 2-day meeting versus the 1-day quarterly pulsing. And departments, sorry, right above that, do departments not meet weekly or bi-weekly, only quarterly? No. Departments could very much also have level 10 meetings every week. It's just that if the department would find value in setting rocks, which we hope everybody eventually has rocks, where would they set those? Not at a leadership team table. There would need to be some structure, and that's what that quarterly or department quarterly means. Okay, lots of things to fire at you. We've covered a lot of ground. I want to pivot us now to get to this point where we could start just Q&A and get through some of the questions. Lisa, I'm going to lean on you a little bit to help us aggregate, coordinate, and tee up the right kinds of questions. I'm going to stop screen sharing from now, but could certainly share again if there's any need to see the graphic. I'm going to hand it over to you to help guide us.
Absolutely. Wow, Matt, you brought your A game today. Great job.
You're kind.
We hope that you had at least one aha moment that you can bring back to your business as you try to work and strengthen this tool. The Q&A has been quite active, and so we're going to jump into our Q&A segment for today's questions. And I hope that we get to as many as humanly possible. Here's what we're going to do, Matt. I'm going to tell you the question, then I'll mark it done, and I'll give you the next question. The first one we have is, in the rocks review, do you review just the 3 to 7 organizational rocks, or do you review also each leadership team member's 3 to 7 individual rocks? Great question.
That is a great question. And Lisa, I like your plan, except I'm going to throw some questions back at you, and this is one of them. Let me give you my idea, but Lisa's smarter and more experienced than I am, so I'm going to have her help. So my answer is, most teams I see find value in reviewing all of them. And people say, oh, we only have 5 minutes and we've got 5 people around the table. And with the company rocks, there might be 4 of those. And then everybody might have a couple. Most people can get through on-track, off-track reports in 5 minutes. Remember, we're not going to get into the weeds. So I see most people wanting to do all of the rocks of the leadership team, company and individual. Lisa?
Yes, that's what I'm seeing as well. And I actually make them time themselves at least once so they know that it can be done. I can get through it in usually 2 to 3 minutes because I don't let people talk too much, but that can be done. Even with a team of 7 people, I've seen it done in 2 to 3 minutes if you're very efficient.
Great. That's great.
All right, next question. What roles do you recommend having in the level 10? Timekeeper, facilitator, note taker, others?
Yeah. So I answered this a little bit earlier, but I'm going to expand on it to maybe a better answer for all that question. EOS believes that everybody at the leadership team table should take off their functional hats, take off your HR hat, take off your sales hat, and put on organizational leader hat. And you own this conversation just as much as your neighbor at the table does. So we want everybody to own keeping us focused, keeping us on time, making sure that we're challenging, that we've got enough conversation, which, by the way, there's a whole conversation to have about. We can't just let a rock owner say on track every week if the rest of us don't believe it. We've got to be able to have enough connection and willingness for conflict to say, well, if your rock's on track, I would expect to see this fruit from that work, and I don't. So I think we should IDS it. And then the other person can't feel like they need to lick their wounds and feel like, get out of my business, because this is not get out of my business. We're sharing our business. So that was a long wind up to say, I think everybody needs to take a role of ownership of the meeting. But I think it is valuable to have one person running the paperwork, which could be EOS 1, 90, the sheet, and one person facilitating the conversation that drives discussion and questions and answers and, hey, let's move to this next topic. So I think those two roles, I don't think you need many more roles than that.
Perfect. Next one. In the weekly pulse meeting, tracking where you are is great, but of course that is retrospect. Do you recommend any regular updated forecasting in your scoreboard, typically a month or two out, as many open book management advocates like Jack Stack and John Case recommend?
Jack Stack and John Case. Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Bill, for the question. This could be a longer, for some boring, for some really interesting conversation. Let me just say this. What we hope we've done by setting rocks and building great scorecards is to be forward-looking enough that it gives us guidance on how to execute for 90 days and week by week. So yes, we want to track where we are. We hope that the metrics we're tracking in our scorecard are forward-looking, that they're leading indicators, not lagging. Some are going to be lagging. Many are lagging, but we want to find the most leading ones we can to give us guidance. So yes, we want them to be forward-looking, not just backward-looking. But your question is also a good one. In the Patrick Lencioni description of death by meetings, he's like, we should have strategic meetings where we look forward. So some teams that I know, that I work with, have as a standing issue on a monthly level 10 meeting, a strategic look to forecast, or a back look to financials that are now available from the last month. So we hope that but we want to keep it simple, and we don't want to burn a bunch of issue time thinking about strategic issues that should be saved for the quarterly meeting and not encumber the weekly meeting. Lisa, what would you add or correct from that answer?
Oh, nothing to correct. That's all really good. The only thing I would add here is I really help my clients to see that scorecard needs to be like you're driving a car. I need most of those scorecard numbers forward looking out the windshield, because that's where most of the danger is. Some of them are rear view mirror. Some of them are looking behind you, but you look out your windshield when you're driving far more than you look out your rear view mirror. And I'd love for the ratio of your scorecard items to be equal to that.
Wonderful. Thank you.
All right. Next question is from Taylor. How many is too many for the level 10? We have a leadership team of 9. Visionary integrator, install lead, service lead, finance lead, sales lead, electrical lead, marketing lead, office manager. We will soon be adding a plumbing lead.
So Taylor, you want 10 in the level 10. We think it's too many, but that's an easy thing for us to say and not know your business. So there was some great conversation in the first of this series that we run on EOS on the accountability chart, which if you can find that recording, it's really gold. Justin Cook just did a fabulous job talking about accountability charts and getting to a leadership team that's lean and functional. And I think the way he described it is great. You want the leadership team to have everyone there who really needs a voice. And if you can have multiple functions represented by one leader effectively, you want that. You want the fewest number of people to cover all of the many moving pieces of the business in the room. We say the rule of thumb is 3 to 7, but I push really hard on that. So yesterday I had a group in my room that I'm sitting in here, my session room, and there were 10 people sitting in the room and one person joined by Zoom, 11 people. We say to people from the work we do for our sessions, add an hour for every person you put in that room beyond 7, because they'll need to have a say, they'll need to. So I'm pushing that team like crazy. And I think there's 3 or 4 people that could consolidate into one leader. So I'm pushing them like crazy to think about keeping it lean and simple and rooting out complexity. But Taylor, I don't know your business. I don't know how much your electrical. So I would say, can your electrical lead, your install lead, and your service lead that sound all like they're operations leaders, could they fall under one representative leader? I don't know. Maybe one day, maybe not today, but 3 to 7 is the rule of thumb.
All right, great. Now, Ben White has a question. How to deal with a red scorecard metric that can't be solved in a week? i.e. you've discussed an issue already, but you yet haven't resolved the issue?
Lisa, take a
Oh,
shot.
this is a great question. Here's what I try to tell my teams. If you don't have some consternation, like it should hurt you a little when that number turns red, it might not be the right number. Now, if you can't get it solved in 1 week, can you get it solved in 2? If you can't get it solved in 2, are we really measuring the right thing? So let's make sure that those scorecard items are giving you an absolute pulse on the health of this business. If you're able to say off track, but not an issue, it might not be the right scorecard item.
Yeah, it's a great answer. And there's going to be a session in this series that's on data and scorecard that this would be a great question, because there's going to be a lot more about how do you build a scorecard that's the right one. I would just add to what Lisa said, exactly the same thing. If you're already dealing with it, there's no need to put it on the issues list. If there's already an issue with actions identified and work underway, and sometimes it takes more than a week to solve it. So I get that. But Lisa's other point is the right one. I have some teams who they set a scorecard number so high and out of reach that it's going to be red the entire quarter till they hit it. I'm like, well, that doesn't give you a weekly pulse. And this is a scorecard question, not a level 10 question. But I want to see if I can change that metric to be something that every week I can see if my progress towards solve is on track. So I might need to set new targets every single week and see if it's red or green every week and make sure I'm on track. But it's a great question.
All right, Ben has another question. And he said, thank you, by the way. So you must have solved him on that one. How to deal with overrunning headline section, more headlines or reactions to them than time allows?
Yeah, so the headline section gets most questions for me of any, because people are like, am I spending the right amount of time here? I don't know really what to do. I think the word headline is the exact right word. So if I pick up a newspaper and I read the headline, it's just giving me the summary. And if I need to read deeper or dive in or ask questions, that's an issue. So we want those headlines to just be like, hey, this person that we just hired has finally achieved certification and they are knocking it out of the park. That's a headline. But if you're like, they haven't yet achieved certification and they are struggling and we need to fix it, that's an issue. So headlines should go really fast. And if there are issues, they need to be cascaded, dropped down to the issues list. And I think you can get through, in 5 minutes, I think you can get through more than 15 headlines if you needed to. If there's more than 15, I'd be like, what's the right venue for communicating? Is it required? That's my gut feeling. Lisa, happy to always have you chime in.
No, that's exactly right. That's exactly what I would say as well. All right. Ben has another question.
Ben, three questions, 3 strikes. Here we go.
No, these aren't strikes. No. He's not out. All right. So we've started asking for the team to nominate priority issues ahead of the meeting. Is this optimal or should it be done in the session?
Do you want to start with that, Lisa, or do you want to finish? Because I got something to say, but I'd love to hear your thoughts first.
All right. Well, I will chime in. I really don't advocate for doing it ahead of time, because as you go through that reporting section of the meeting, you are building your issues list. There could be a headline, a scorecard, a rock that is way more important than what you thought it was at the beginning of the day, or even 2 days ago. And so I would really ask you to wait until the issues list is fully formed. And that means before we start issues, you're going to say, are there any new issues? Because while you were going through everything, you may have had a thought. So hopefully whoever's facilitating your meeting is asking that question. So now we have a fully formed issues list. Now we prioritize, because we have to pick the most important, not the easiest or fastest.
Yeah. Awesome. That's what I would say with one PS. I do love people going in and looking at the issues list before the L10 so that they're thinking about what issues they want to solve and what things they want to come prepared to solve. I don't want people just landing in the meeting and taking what's there. But everything Lisa said is absolutely right. I just would love the prep that you suggested to be a good mindset, if not like an elevation of something above another. And Ben, of course, I didn't mean to use the word strikes. I'm happy for any and all questions.
All right. We have another one that's an HR exec, and this is such a good question. When you talked about quarterly conversations, I get a lot of pushback from managers documenting people issues that need to be documented. There is an assumption that the informal means it should never be written down. How can we balance the informal strategy with also needing to document performance issues? Or should performance issues be documented completely separately?
Yeah, Lisa, I'd love your wisdom on this. Let me start by saying we need to document performance issues. We need to face the danger, we need to tackle the problem. If there's a performance issue that you find in a quarterly meeting, we should tackle it, document it, make it part of our performance management system. What else would you say, Lisa?
I absolutely. And part of what we teach in LMA is that you need to be having those conversations, the kick in the pants or the pat on the back within 24 hours. So you absolutely should be documenting all along the way. That's going to really help you with those quarterly conversations. The quarterly conversation in and of itself is not formal, so it isn't documented formally. Although when I was doing these as an integrator, I had my own informal file where I kept some of those notes. They were just for me so that I was being a good steward. Hope that helps.
Awesome.
All right, we have Taylor, who is saying, first time seeing the idea of having a departmental quarterly or annual. Should this happen before or after the leadership team quarterlies or annuals? My gut says after, so they can formulate a plan to help achieve the company goals.
Yes, after company rock should be set with clarity about what we want at the highest level of the organization, to which then departments can plug in and align. Yes.
Perfect. The next one is John. We are in our first year running EOS. Our leadership team has benefited from using the L10 meetings, and I'm wondering if I can adopt an L10 meeting format to my departments. Should I review what was covered in the leadership team at my department level? Should I have shared line items in the scorecard between leadership team and department?
This is such a great question. I think it might just benefit from a couple of minutes, and I'm watching our time. So Lisa, you got to tell me when we're out of time. I'll go quick through these 2 minutes. Gotcha. We believe that L10 should cascade throughout the organization. But the L10s at the lower parts of the organization, I don't mean lower, but more direct frontline parts of the organization, look different than the leadership team L10 in many cases. That might not be 90 minutes. It might not be as strategic of an issue. But we eventually believe that every department and every person should be in some form of a meeting. The skinniest form of an L10 meeting that I've seen work well is where there's just a huddle where we stand up every week and we review issues and to-dos. So we keep people accountable and we discuss and we have problem solving as a team. Of course, we'd love that group to also have a scorecard of metrics and maybe some rocks. But yes, we believe they should have separate scorecards, some of the metrics feeding into the leadership team scorecard. But yes, I think that's the quick answer with a little bit of teaching along the way.
All right, we actually have time. We're going to grab one more. And it is, if you're taking the top 3 issues and then working down from those issues, how do you get to the important but not urgent issues? Is that what the quarterly issues list is for?
No. The quarterly issue is first. The quarterly discussion in a quarterly is definitely for strategic issues, but strategic versus important is not the same thing. So we hope that when you have an issues list, maybe there's 25 things on it when you get finished with the first 25 minutes of the L10, and then you got your 60 minutes. We want you to be pretty quick in identifying the top 3 things to solve. And we hope important comes higher than urgent in many of those cases. Some are urgent. But we hope that important doesn't just get put below. Or I see teams sometimes saying, well, this is a quick solve. Let's handle it first. And I'm like, I don't want quick as the top. I want most important, which sometimes includes a degree of urgency. So if you think your team is choosing 1, 2, 3, and they're all just fires that are burning right now that feel hot, but maybe are not the most important, you need to exert a little bit of like, well, hold on, this issue here that keeps getting pushed down, we got to solve this. Let's put it in the top 3. And the team needs to get good at this. And this is really hard skill to develop, but it's the muscle. This is what leadership teams and EOS companies do the most, is issue solve. Across all the other things we do, they spend an hour IDSing every week. They need to get good at this, and it's not just urgent. I don't know if you'd change any of the answer, Lisa.
No, the only thing I would add is that I really want you to hone in on that leadership ability of predicting the most important thing to talk about this week. Time is such a limited resource. We only get 24 hours in a day. Nobody's broken the 24-hour rule. So those 60 minutes are incredibly precious. And if you do some math and figure out how much money is sitting around that table for 60 minutes, please use every minute wisely. So predicting well what's most important to talk about is a critical leadership skill. That's the only thing I would add.
Awesome.
All right. We might have time to sneak this one in. We have an issue with people completing their to-dos on the morning of the meeting. Sometimes there are to-dos that need to be done in order for someone else to get their to-dos done on time. Suggestions? Can you wrap that in like 30 seconds?
Yep, you're just human. People procrastinate. I do. It's okay. That's okay. I'm okay with people getting things done last minute. That's why we have deadlines. I'm okay with that. But if there are other issues that are contingencies on some other to-dos, like so one to-do is dependent on another, when you set that to-do, the people who own it should say, well, I'm going to need this before I start and finish this. So either I need longer to do my to-do, or I'm going to need you to finish yours in 3 days if I'm going to have mine done in 7 days. And we should have that conversation when the to-do is created so that there's crisp, clear, clean accountability, rather than at the end be like, well, I expect you to do done. And you're like, well, you gave me the deadline of today, so and I did it. Well, we should have either given you an earlier deadline or given me a later deadline. That will come with time as you build that muscle of IDS and to-do setting.
Perfect. All right. We are at 5 minutes to the end. So Matt, could you share your slides again so we can get through the last couple?
Sure thing.
All right, Matt, first of all, let me thank you for delivering such great training and great answers today. And I want to remind everyone on this webinar that you can contact Matt or myself if you have further questions. Our email addresses have already been dropped into the chat. We would love to connect with you anytime you need it. We also have 2 resources here. EOS 1 is live. It is the official software for running your business on the entrepreneurial operating system to help align your team around one shared vision using one system to drive greater accountability at every level. Please use that blue QR code if you want to get connected with that. And lastly, if you would like to get matched with an EOS implementer in your area, the orange QR code is how you do that. We would love to help get you connected to the right person. With that, your next steps are on there for you. If you could just please let us know how we did today. It's only a few questions, but there will be a survey given to you. We really value your feedback. It's incredibly important. We want to improve. We want to get better. All right, with that done, that's it for today's We Run on EOS event. Matt, do you have any final words you'd like to share?
No, thanks for joining. We really have as one of our core values, help first. So Lisa or I or other EOS folks, we really are anxious to help and get you what you want out of your business. And whatever stage you're in, we want that to be successful. So we wish you the most. We wish you personal and professional prosperity.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That's it. I'm going to give you 2 minutes back in your day. We are concluding this We Run on EOS webinar event. Thanks for being here with us. Great questions. Couldn't have curated that better.